Welcome into the Transfer Portal Show. I am Emily Proud. We have new faces in new places, but one thing that will never change is me asking you to join the chat by subscribing to the 24/7 Sports YouTube channel, and also please like this video so we know that you're watching. Let's get right to our portal expert, Chris Hummer. And Chris, I feel like the last time we talked to each other was on the Portal Palooza show. It was a crazy day for everyone, and then I just kind of went on with the rest of my life after that. But what have things been like for you since then?
Oh, just, casual time of year for all of us in the transfer portal. Nothing going on, just exploring that magical realm that is the portal. And there's plenty to explore right now. It is the craziest time of year in college football, in my opinion. It doesn't get crazier than this. I think every single college staffer across the country would agree. This is true chaos happening all at once.
All at once, yeah, because there's, bowl games happening. We've got some coaching movement, and signing day is next week. But today is all about the transfer portal. So let's touch on some guys who have made commitments recently. We've got the #1 portal quarterback, Aidan Chiles, officially transferring to Michigan State. That going down today. The former Oregon State quarterback following his head coach. Chris, this one just seemed inevitable.
Yeah, Brandon Huffman basically announced this on our signing day, or on our portal show a couple weeks ago. It was pretty obvious from the moment Aidan Chiles' name came up that he would be following Jonathan Smith to Michigan State. And we've talked a lot about Aidan Chiles in the last couple weeks. He's our #1 quarterback for a reason. Our transfer portal experts view him as maybe not a generational quarterback, but a very, very good quarterback who can change the ceiling of a program. And personally, I think he's the best quarterback at Michigan State, or has the potential to be the best quarterback at Michigan State since Connor Cook was there. Connor Cook feels like a very long time ago if you're a Michigan State fan, I'm sure, and I think Aidan Chiles has that type of potential. He's exactly the building block you want to start off the Jonathan Smith era. He is the type of quarterback that I think allows Michigan State to be very good very quickly. There's no more important player position than quarterback, and Aidan Chiles is the ideal guy to start the Jonathan Smith era of Michigan State football.
I actually asked our friend Stephen Brooks of Spartan Tailgate, our 24/7 Sports team site, about Aidan Chiles, and he would be the best quarterback since who at Michigan State? And he had trouble bringing up an answer. So it's certainly been a long time since they've had a quarterback of his stature. We'll talk more about the fit of Rocket Sanders and South Carolina in our next segment. But I want to ask you, Chris, the man with all the knowledge, what can you tell us about how this marriage came to be?
Well, there's several former Arkansas staff members on the South Carolina staff, including their offensive coordinator, Dow Loggins. So this marriage always made a lot of sense. It's a pairing that has been speculated on for a long time, including maybe even a little bit last year at this time of year. Rocket ultimately decided to stay at Arkansas for the season, but that's how that linkage came together. And I think when you talk about a South Carolina team that had to get better at running back, they lost Mario Anderson to the portal, somebody who they got last season from the D2 ranks as a success story. You could strongly argue they upgraded with Rocket Sanders.
All right, let's talk about another SEC school. Former North Texas wide receiver Jamori Macklin committed to Kentucky yesterday. Now, for those who may not have watched every Mean Green game like I did this past season, what kind of player did the Cats just add?
Well, first, shout out to Denton, Texas. Wonderful place. But Jamori Macklin's one of the top receivers in the portal for a reason. He was a 1,000-yard receiver last year. He can really stretch the field vertically. He averaged 17 yards a catch in 2023. He averaged almost 24 yards a catch in 2022. This is a true vertical threat. And Kentucky really needs a lot of wide receiver help. They've been very aggressive with wide receivers in the portal for a reason. That offense has to get better through the passing game. Obviously, Brock Vandagriff wants key receivers to throw to, and Jamori Macklin is somebody who can come in right away and be that guy for Kentucky. I think he is one of the top wide receivers in the portal without question, and I think this is exactly what Kentucky's offense needed moving into 2024.
Yeah, you get your quarterback, you get your wide receiver. It's just a whole new look offense for the Cats for next season. Hey, if you have not already, go ahead and hit that like button. We would much appreciate it. A lot of you guys are watching right now. I know everybody's interested to see what's happening in the portal, and that's why we have our portal expert on. So those are the guys who have committed, but there's, of course, still weeks to go until decisions need to be made, or I guess they could continue to be made, but, the next semester does have to start eventually, Chris. So let's roll through some guys who are uncommitted. Former Wazoo quarterback Cam Ward, he's been on a lot of visits, has had a lot of interest. So what's the latest with his recruitment?
Yeah, if you ask a lot of schools around the country, Cam is pretty definitively the #1 quarterback in the portal right now. I think it's just a matter of the flavor of the week for some people, but I would also agree with that. I think Cam is the most talented quarterback in the transfer portal. He's coming off a visit to Miami. He was there earlier this week. Tomorrow, he's set to take a visit to Florida State. I think there's a chance he sneaks out for one more visit as well, but I don't see Cam's visit list or Ward's visit list extending much beyond that. I would say right now, at least, the two Florida schools are probably the favorites for his services. Ward's an interesting one to track, though, because he's also pretty directly tied to two other quarterbacks at the moment. Will Howard, the former Kansas State quarterback, was at Miami the day before Cam Ward was there. And DJU Uiagalelei is at Florida State at the same time, essentially, as Cam Ward. I think both schools would love to get Cam Ward. I think both schools would, in some ways, view Cam Ward as option A, but they also have to balance not scaring off the other quarterback that they're interested in and also hosting. So this is kind of a dance right now with all three of them tied together in a way, and it'll be very interesting to see how it untangles. The Miami visit went really well for Cam Ward, and I know Florida State's going to roll out the red carpet as well.
That's why we call it quarterback dominoes. I don't know if you've ever set up dominoes, but when one goes, they all fall. So it is a very delicate balance there. It'll be interesting to see where all of those guys land. Let's go to former Vanderbilt wide receiver, London Humphreys. He currently has 5 crystal balls to end up at Georgia. Feels like a consensus. Of course, one of them is yours that you put in yesterday. So what has you leaning the dogs here?
I will say it hasn't really been a secret that London Humphreys and Georgia have been linked together. They were linked before he ever entered the portal, to be frank. And London took a visit to Georgia over the weekend. I've heard it went really well. I don't think London has any additional visits scheduled at the moment. I think if you talk to people at his former school, they expect London to end up at Georgia as well, based on how all of this is played out. And I would be very surprised if he wasn't a Bulldog eventually. I really like the Bulldogs here. That's where my crystal ball sits, and I feel very confident about that one at this point.
All right, Chris, that's all the questions I have for you, but we got some viewer questions because everybody's in the chat right now saying we got to take advantage of the fact that Chris is on this show. Andrew would like to know, do you see Walter Nolen transferring before the dead period? Follow up, if so, is it Ole Miss or Oregon?
I think it's a little too early to say which one it's going to be. That visit to Ole Miss could really change things. I think Walter Nolen's also somebody who's going to command a lot of attention and potentially take his time. I would never venture to say if somebody's going to commit at a certain time because this changes rapidly. I could certainly tell you stories about Kyle McCord from yesterday and how people are thinking compared to what they think now. But I think Oregon put its best foot forward. I think it's always been difficult to envision Walter Nolen leaving the SEC and the Southeastern footprint, which is where I think Ole Miss could have a potential leg up there. But it's a very competitive fight for Walter Nolen. He's the #1 player in our rankings for a reason.
Okay, can't just dangle the Kyle McCord information. I have a follow-up with that. I know that we're currently tracking a potential flip for the #1 quarterback in the 2024 class and Dylan Raiola, but how does that maybe factor into what's happening with Kyle McCord right now? Because things have changed course from the original thought of Nebraska, right?
All I would say on that is that I think there was a strong expectation around Nebraska, maybe Tuesday night, that after they hosted Kyle McCord and Julian Fleming, that they were in strong position to get McCord and potentially Fleming as well. That changed rapidly on Wednesday, and I think if you want to play connect the dots, the obvious missing element there would be the status of Dylan Raiola. That was not a secret when Kyle McCord was there, so I think that is an interesting thing to untangle a little bit. I'm still diving into it a little bit more, but it certainly changed rapidly over essentially an 18-hour period between Tuesday and Wednesday.
Yeah, once again, that's why we call it quarterback dominoes, as they're all somewhat connected, and one has to fall for the rest of them too. And we know when that happens, you're going to be all over it. Chris, thanks for being on the show. You can check out more of his work on the transfer portal at 247sports.com. You can find updated rankings, intel. I think Chris has an absolutely monster piece out right now, just dumping the notebook. Definitely go check it out on 247sports.com.